I hope you're ready for even more crimes.
Down, 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 down. So back at school, we are the leaders. Every day, so then you know. So back at school. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CM Kozeman Criminal Cryptids Extravaganza Part 2. As you can see, we spared no expense in making this amazing sequel come to life. Hello everybody and welcome to my channel once again. If you haven't watched the first part of the video, we will be for an hour or so studying every sort of weird, sordid and strange urban legend and thing basically that live in the intersection of urban legends, cryptozoology and true crime. This is your host CM Kozeman speaking, and without much ado, before beginning, please consider subscribing to this channel, liking me, and clicking the little goddamn bell icon, and maybe even leave a comment so we can together beat the algorithm. Also, we have several support sites where you can support this channel. Please join our Patreon where you will have a chance to download this amazing presentation. And also, if you're just coming to this channel from this video, you may not know, but I'm also a slightly famous surreal artist and science fiction writer. So if you join my Patreon, you will get first dibs on every new artwork and fiction writing that I partake in basically. If you just want to support me briefly, you can also go to buymeacoffee.com/cmkozeman and just buy me a coffee. And if you do so, you will also have access to a special gallery of funny and colorful surreal paintings that nobody else can access anywhere else. Also consider supporting Prometheum for her contribution to the intro video. As a member of the CM Kozeman Extended Cinematic Universe, she can always use your contributions on Buy Me a Coffee and also on Instagram. The links are here and in the video description. Alright, also as part of the CM Kozeman Extended Universe, we have lots of friends. This channel has over 43,000 almost subscribers as of the date of recording, which was late October 2023. Please consider subscribing once more and also invite your friends. This is just the kind of content you would watch with a loved one or somebody you have a crush on, and before you know, you would be getting it on, because this is how exciting this channel gets. Anyways, that was a sidetrack. Because of the size and increasing minimal popularity of this channel, I have also been making many online friends, as you just saw before. Some of them help with the intro videos, and some of them, such as Andre Sprach, Ellie H. Brooks, Larma Lassa, and Hilmi Lord Grunwalder Ira, and Meliha Montaj, they helped with their suggestions of further criminal cryptids. Because remember, this is part 2 of a 2-part series. Maybe there will be even more parts in the future, we never know. But if you just start watching from here, you're not missing out. Let's go through our previous section and let's kind of give you a lowdown on what makes a cryptid. Now, as everybody knows, cryptozoology is a popular internet subculture in this day and age. Everybody is on about the Loch Ness monsters, the Bigfoot, the Yowies, the Almas, the sea serpents, and everything else under the sun. So cryptids are unique things, they're a mix of real animals such as the Komodo dragon and the cute pandas. Once upon a time they were proper cryptids. Then you got things that are presumed extinct like the thylacines. Then you got some prehistoric survivor cryptids like the slightly less likely dinosaurs surviving in Africa, for example. Then you got all sorts of sea monsters, especially in the oceans. There are many sightings of individual creatures. And also in the lakes of North America, almost every lake has a lake monster legend. And of course, we have the famous Loch Ness monster, Nessie, in this category. Then, what makes a cryptid can go quite off the far and weird edge. And you got some myths and tall tales being counted and recounted as cryptids, such as, well, I'll just give you one example. The squonk creature from Pennsylvanian, basically, lumberjack stories, which was just like a weird crying bird that cries so hard it cries itself out of existence, but that's just a tall tale. And then in the far edge of the spectrum you have UFO lore and dark cryptids, and one could even include internet lore and urban legends here. For example, the famous Slender Man figure, although it clearly started out as a fictional copy-pasta, now many people would consider it as a quote-unquote cryptid. So cryptids are a mixed bag. They are like a heterodox alloy of different molten forms of, let us say, contemporary scientific folklore, and the intersection of all of these weird things has come to be accepted as something called cryptozoology in the present day. Now, one of my pet theories is the need to classify cryptozoology as a science, not as a biological or even like hard science, but it should really be studied on its own as a form of contemporary or urban technology and biology literate folklore. And then we go off the furthest far end, and let us now look at what makes a criminal cryptid, because this is a concept which I am kind of proud to have introduced, and in my previous YouTube video, if nothing else, because there is a weird set of intersection. Now, we've established that cryptozoology is basically an intersectional folklore, so we can cross it over with other forms of contemporary urban folklore and get to the crux of the matter, that is criminal cryptozoology. Now, at the intersection of urban legends, memorable quote-unquote entities, and true crime reports, we find criminal cryptids. And more often than not, unlike many other like proper cryptids, whatever that means, criminal cryptids live where you live. They live in suburban America, suburban Australia, weird parts of Turkey, but they are like urban and like accessible creatures. They live where you live. And mostly criminal cryptids are human beings. Sometimes they may be more than just human, but read on and watch on and we will see. Most of them pertain to, or at least pretend to pertain to, a real or reported event. So you get lots of reports from newspapers and like little known websites and forums, and this just makes for some great research. I really enjoy researching such stuff. Most criminal cryptids are focused around a recognizable entity, as we will soon see. You gotta have the entity to have the criminal cryptids, and they may display extraordinary abilities, as we will shortly see, but usually are not supernatural, but are like dark and grim and like memorable in some other way. Usually they bleed over to urban legends or other segments or other spectra of the cryptozoology continuum. And as we will see here, some criminal cryptids will be related to spiritual creatures, some will be related to UFO lore, and so on and so forth. Let's go! Let's look at what we saw previously on Criminal Cryptids. Previously on Criminal Cryptids. Okay, let's look at all the Criminal Cryptids we kind of studied in the first video. The links are also in the pinned comment and in the video description, so you can go watch it. Now, this video had some sound issues, so I'm sorely tempted to redo it. Let me know in the comments if you want me to redo Criminal Cryptids Part 1. But anyways, in that memorable video, we saw things like Spring-Heeled Jack, you know. This is the essence of a criminal cryptid. A criminal person who was so notorious that he kind of became a sort of entity with his own legend. We saw things like the Mad Gasser of Mattoon, the Havana Syndrome, in which people, well, basically state employees working in Cuba experienced weird buzzing noises and like some weird syndromes, basically. We had the Turkish helmet assaulter, and we got the legend of the Black Volgas from former Warsaw Pact countries. We had Robert Leroy Johnson, who was obviously not a criminal, but he had his notorious legend. He was a very famous blues singer who kind of had a legend about himself. Supposedly, he made a pact with the devil in exchange of a very, very supremely accentuated talent in singing, basically. We have the phantom social workers, people who look like social workers but who aren't social workers, who come to your doorstep to steal your kids, basically. We have the famous Zodiac killer. Now, a bit of a caveat here. Many of these, like mostly American serial killers, could be considered to be criminal cryptids, but on purpose, I'm not going too deeply into the whole serial killer or like true criminal lore, basically, because that's a whole quagmire in itself. So I'm not looking at people like Ed Gein, you know, like I'm not looking at like bloody killers. But the Zodiac was an exception because this guy was like an entity. He had this weird uniform and alphabet and everything. We had the Shotgun Man from turn of century New York. You have to watch the video to learn more about him. We had Ricardo Lopez, the notorious stalker who transformed himself into a strange entity before his unfortunate suicide. We have the Sandown Clown, a sort of UFO folklore creature who may or may not have been a weird kind of weird person in a clown suit, basically. We have the US clown epidemic that took place between 2016 and 18. We have the legend of the Bunny Man, supposedly a man in a bunny suit wielding an axe. We have Catman of Greenock, a real life eccentric who basically lives like an animal and he's just cool. Catman. Then in a related species almost, we have the Claverham Gimp, a weird person who was recorded trying to disturb, let us say, other people, dressed in nothing else but a gimp suit. We have Dart Jones, who famously threatened the now late Queen of England, and we had like many more mask-wearing criminals, but you just have to watch the video to learn more about them. We have the Monkey Man of Calcutta, who caused a panic in Calcutta around the year 2000, and I mean, as you can see here, there were a lot of weird theories floating about this entity. You just have to watch them, people. You just have to go, click the link, and watch Criminal Cryptids Part 1. You had Popa Bawa, who terrorized. This creature was known to break into houses and there's no easier way to say it, molest males, basically. Anyways, you have the Indonesian COVID ghosts. You got the bug chasers, a kind of urban legend which may or may not have been true. You have the famous legend of syringe people in Turkey and in, well, most parts of the world. Around the 1990s, there were these urban legends of people who supposedly attacked people in the subway or in cinemas with syringes that were loaded with AIDS-infected blood. Nothing about this was real. You got the ankle slashers, a common phobia in contemporary America. Supposedly these people who hide below your car when you're at Walmart, and when you come back to your car with the groceries, they jump out and slash your ankles. You got the black-eyed children, who were mostly a UK-based sensation. You have the Serbian dancing lady, who became an early internet creepypasta phenomenon. You had the Ottoman vampires. Now this was lit, but you just have to watch the video to find out more about them. Subscribe to this channel and watch. Okay, you have the crying boy, the supposedly cursed painting that caused disasters wherever it went. You have another cursed painting, Hands Resist Him, which apparently was cursed and was sold from eBay. Then you got the Dark Watcher phenomenon, commonly visible to hikers in certain parts of California. Then you got Obama's reptilian bodyguards, showing the intersections between criminal cryptid folklore and contemporary conspiracy theories, basically. Finally, you had this Pombero creature, who was a mischief-committing, actual criminal, quasi-human spirit known from basically Latin America. Anyways, let's go, because after we watch through all these criminal cryptids in part 1, a lot of people wrote back to me with reports of criminal cryptids of their own, and of course I did some more research and found out some more criminal cryptids, and that's why this video exists, and that's why you're watching it. Let's go! A quite obvious example is Jack the Ripper, a cousin of, let us say, Spring-Heeled Jack. Again, a Victorian criminal, but this one was a really bloody criminal, and I kind of slapped myself on the head for missing out on this one in part 1, but here you go. Part 2 starts with Jack the Ripper, basically set in Victorian England, Victorian London. It was a kind of glamorous but also a very dark place, a lot of, back in these days, none of the social safety nets that people take for granted existed. If you were hungry, you basically starved, and people tend to romanticize this age. They think it was like Harry Potter and stuff like this, but no, actually it was a very dark, very grim age, and just at the crest of the British Empire. But a lot of people lived in really squalid conditions, and then this thing happened. Basically, a killer broke loose, assaulting and murdering women who lived in less than ideal quarters, but really mutilating them in horrible ways. And this was one of the first well-publicized detective cases. There were lots of suspicions about who Jack the Ripper might be, and it was a big media sensation. I'm not gonna go too deeply into the lore of Jack the Ripper, because there are many videos on YouTube already talking about this thing. I just wanted to go down in our notes as probably one of the first criminal cryptids. A criminal who was so grisly that he became an entity unto himself, and if I'm not mistaken, nobody really solved this series of murders. And here is a kind of then contemporary cartoon of Jack the Ripper. Basically, he's a personification of urban neglect and urban squalor. People kind of realized that, conditions were horrible, and if you let a city fester like this, then killers like this guy are gonna come out. He even wrote letters to the press, which kind of rank him probably as the first psycho killer to write letters to newspapers, and this just poured fuel on the fire of the media furore surrounding this character. And I'm not going to read all of these, but here is what a sample Jack the Ripper letter reads like. Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police are caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I loved when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fit. So he's making fun of efforts to catch him, basically. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got all red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. In another letter, he's talking about how he couldn't finish off a victim, and the victim ran away apparently. And then in one of the letters, this might be another writer, by the way. See, some of the letters just say boss. This was a common figure of slang speech at the time in England. But here the letter says, "From hell, Mr. Lusk, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you to the piece I fried and ate. It was so," like, whoever this Jack the Ripper was, one person or several, he's now graduated into, like, basically cutting off and cooking and eating human body parts. Some channels might glorify this kind of stuff, saying they're absolute mad lads or like just so far out there, but it's just, this kind of violence to me is banal, and like, it's just a really sad story. And to this day, Jack the Ripper is a very famous personality. Once again, we're not going too deep into his deepest lore. I'm sure I may have made some mistakes or omitted some things, but we're gonna be covering a lot of criminal cryptids. And in the contemporary day and age, Jack the Ripper is kind of like almost like a banal thing associated with banal people's ideas of Victorian England. So there's a Jack the Ripper museum in London. It's not very interesting. And there are even like Jack the Ripper cocktails. Almost fill a shaker with ice and add the whiskey and butterscotch schnapps, then shake. Strain into a brandy snifter. I mean, from like a really awful killer to a kind of whiskey cocktail in the space of a few generations. Interesting. The crimes, of course, now after every criminal cryptid, we have a crimes and verdict section. So the crimes obviously here are murder and rape, if not worse things, cannibalism maybe. And our verdict is obviously, this is the world's first media-hyped serial killer. And it's no coincidence that, Victorian England was also the first place where we saw the emergence of the contemporary tabloid press. Anyways, moving on. We got a similar masked hero, not a villain this time, in the form of Parak from Prague from 1939 onwards. Basically, Parak was this kind of masked hero during World War II, resisting the Nazi occupation. He apparently wore a kind of pilot suit, so he was a masked hero, much like Batman almost. And he hung about on rooftops and threw Molotov cocktails to Nazi occupiers, and basically a wartime hero for the oppressed. And there are many very interesting books about Parak. Unfortunately, they're all in Czech, so I am not privy to reading them, but I know this channel has many Czech readers, many Czech viewers, so check it out. And if you want to share more information about Parak, please do so in the comments below. Certainly, though, the mythification and the sort of almost like turning into entities of wartime heroes, real or imagined. Oh, by the way, this Parak character probably was not real. He was probably a story invented to make up morale. But, we see the continuation of this trend in the contemporary day and age. Just for posterity, I am recording in late October 2023. And now the the war between Ukraine and Russia is nearly 2 years old, and of course we had such legends in this war too. In order to drum up morale for the Ukrainian resistance, people kind of invented the ghost of Kiev, who was a legendary pilot who apparently shot down many invading Russian airplanes. Later it emerged that this guy was like a complete fiction, but legends have a value of their own. You see that in the American invasion of Iraq as well. Chris Kyle, I would say a based guy, a based guy with somewhat murderous tendencies, but a well-respected person in his country nevertheless. He became stuff of legend, especially with that movie where Bradley Cooper portrays him. He's like trying to shoot a target from a kilometer away, and he's like so sharp-eyed in that film he could even shoot a rattlesnake in the bush next to that target he was supposed to shoot, which was 1,000 meters away. And did that really happen? Of course, this is a sort of lesser, like Chris Kyle was a real person, unlike the ghost of Kiev or probably Juba the Baghdad sniper. I'm just illustrating this to show that both sides had their legendary snipers in the Iraq war. And then during the big war against ISIS in Iraq between 2013 and 2017, you had Abu Tahsin al-Salihi, who was a legendary sniper who killed over 300 ISIS fighters, and he truly became like the stuff of legend. All I'm saying with stuff like Juba the Sniper, Chris Kyle and Abu Tahsin is that there is a way heroes are made during wartime, and slowly but surely the crust of legend accumulates about them until at a certain point you get completely imaginary entities like the ghost of Kiev or Parak, the rooftop resistance fighter of Czechia. And don't for once think that this is a modern phenomenon or it is something limited to non-Western countries basically. No, actually, during the great loss of innocence that was the First World War, there was a famous legend called the Angels of Mons, in a battle called the Battle of Mons, in which the British were forced to an ignoble retreat against German advances. And here we have not only the angels, but according to the Wikipedia article, several groups of supernatural creatures. Some, like these things, were angels, and I always thought these legends were as scary as it gets, real like horror movie Lovecraftian stuff. I don't know, there's just something about like a legendary sniper or a legendary pilot I can understand, but something about like actual unearthly angels emerging in a battlefield, it's just scary, like beyond of the pale, let us just say. Oh my god, Daddy Cosmo's got a sore throat from all the speaking. Just amazing. And during this Angel of Mons incident, actually, multiple groups of supernatural creatures are mentioned. Some of them were like proper unearthly angels. Some were like flying cavalry almost, saying no, advance no further. And in a few cases there are even reports of the ghosts of archers from the Battle of Agincourt, which was that famous medieval war in which British longbow archers completely routed a group of arrogant French knights, let us say. And of course, if you look back in hindsight, this is just propaganda. The massive death toll in World War I was an enormous shock to combatants of both nations. In fact, when the war first started, people were writing like, haha, I only expect like this war to go on for 1 month and maybe 10,000 people will die, but no, millions died. So it was a great horror, and in wartime, truth is the first casualty of war. So lots of stories like this were pretty much invented out of thin air to cover the disgrace of retreats and loss. And even going further back in time, you have famous visions. For example, the vision of Constantine, in which during what would otherwise have been like a completely disgusting and like stupid and pointless civil war in the later stages of the Roman Empire. Basically, the Roman Empire, which most loser men these days say they like to think about once every day, towards its later stages, it was just like a non-stop slog of imperial pretenders, civil war, extremely rich and arrogant elites fighting battles against each other. And one of my pet understandings of history is that Rome didn't fall because barbarians destroyed it, but it also fell because people living in it were basically sick of that polity. Anyways, that caveat aside, during one of these like pointless shitty wars, Constantine the Great had supposedly had a vision saying that he saw a cross saying "with this conquer," and then he won against his adversary, who the fuck ever that was. You gotta realize this is like, imagine in the US, different senators were having real life wars against each other to solve petty political disagreements, let us say. And anyways, so he had a miraculous vision too, supposedly. And of course, there's no crime here. The verdict is just a war hero myth. And, miraculous or supernatural beings or incidents are probably as old as the history of war itself. Moving on, we got a really dark one here, so I'm not even gonna go too deeply over it. We got this thing called Mr. Cruel, who was reported from Melbourne, Australia in different instances between 1987, 88 and 1990. This is Melbourne, by the way. Quite a dystopic city stretching across a grid of suburbs. This was actually the city that stood in for the mega city in the Matrix. They filmed it in Melbourne, so that's a nice side tangent to go in. Anyway, so maybe it is no coincidence that in a weirdly inhuman suburban / urban environment like this, somebody like this props up. There is no deeper lore. This was a guy who kidnapped and molested and basically tortured and sexually assaulted several children during at least 3 known instances. And all we know about this guy are the sketches that the kids and the police made about him. So this was really dark. He abducted these kids, and the media were optimistic. Police are optimistic on Mr. Cruel arrest. But the dark truth is that nobody could find and arrest this person. He's probably still alive today. And I only wish the worst for people like this. There are even reports by the kids who were rescued of his bedroom and stuff, but to my best knowledge, nobody has arrested this guy. And the verdict is just kill these people on sight, on principle. A lot of people say death penalty is cruel, but in proven cases of abduction and rape, it should be summary execution. This is just my opinion, and it's one of those little hills I'm gonna shed some blood on. Anyways, moving on. Now we got something lighter, more true mystery. The lead mask deaths that took place in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro in 1966. Basically, two guys were found dead wearing these strange lead masks and with some weird notes on them. And they said these guys, whatever they were doing, they were really punctual. It says at 4:30, be at the specified location. And then at 6:30, then they ingested some capsules, and after the effect, protect metals, await signal mask. These are all the notes. Who knows? I mean, this is just a really bizarre story. Imagine you're the cops in Brazil and you just discover 2 bodies wearing lead masks and they got these notes with them. Nothing further is known. I mean, they must have done something, but was it a UFO cult? Was it a suicide pact? Or maybe, this is my theory, maybe they were killed for pretty routine, quote unquote, mafia reasons by a drug gang or whatever. But, these mafia guys, being smart and creative people, you have to be in order to survive in the Latin American underworld. Being smart and creative people, they just made up this cult apparel with these corpses. So maybe these were routine drug killings and they just threw this around as red herrings. And if that was the case, it was really effective because nobody really solved these murders. By the way, on all of these mysteries, I did a deep dive on all these cases, but if I'm mistaking any points, please let me know and correct me. I know I got a lot of viewers from Brazil, so all my best to your part of the world. Alright, then recently you got the York County Housewitch from Pennsylvania in 2022, so less than a year old at the time of recording. Now keep an eye on Pennsylvania because we're gonna have a lot of criminal cryptids from this part of the states. Mom, too scared to go to sleep after seeing ghostly figure on security camera. Well, one of the telling, damning signs of our age is that almost everybody in the states has these like fucking doorbell cameras now, because you need to spy on your neighbors, you need to spy on neighbors' pets, you need to spy on people in the streets. Oh, and heaven forbid, you need to spy on the people delivering packages for you, in case they do something to your packages. Anyway, it's just like a part of suburban paranoia and alienation that I personally hate. But anyways, in one of those security cameras, this yummy mummy with the last name Pitt apparently saw something in their house. So this wasn't a doorbell camera, but this was an indoor camera. Here we go. Pitt woke up when she heard heavy footsteps in her home at 3:40 a.m. When she checked out the camera, she saw what appeared to be a ghostly figure in the kitchen. I made sure Jeffrey was still in bed because I thought it could be him. I checked the camera and stared at it for a little bit because I thought I saw somebody. She then woke up Jeffrey, and Jeffrey was like, oh man, not another one of those nights, and went downstairs to check, but no one was home. Even Ollie, these are just the people who would name their dog Ollie, don't you think, was pacing around the kitchen. I mean, maybe he was hungry, but this article makes it sound like Ollie was spooked. Oh my god. And this is what they saw apparently in the security camera footage. Let us use our super techno cosmet enhancers. Enhance 35 to 47. Alright, it's really a fucking scary witch. I mean, in contemporary indoor security cameras with the dark vision and infrared, right, and all, sometimes you do get these like ghostly visions because there's a spider web or like a moth flies across the camera lens or something. But this thing is really like out there. It really looks like a weird skull. What do you think this could be? I don't know. But this couple was kinda annoying, but I think it's well within their rights to be fucking scared of this thing. Look at it. It's just like, it's also like just that part of the states as well. I mean, for friends who don't know, the state of Pennsylvania, I actually drove through it once, years and years ago. Drove all through Harrisburg, near Allentown. I was just driving from New York to Cincinnati, but I crossed through the states. It was full of ghostly places. There's a kind of weird thing about the light there. It's like all these like small hills with lots of forests on them, and it's just a scary place. Doesn't also help that lots of weird religious sects settled in that part. Anyways, just a scary place overall. Unless I'm mistaking, the famous Blair Witch Project, the horror movie that was a runaway hit in the 1990s, that was also set in Pennsylvania too. Anyways, so they saw this. I mean, if there's any crime, it's breaking and entering. In my opinion, my verdict, this was either a hoax or a devilish prank. Just so mean. Maybe, who knows, I mean, or maybe she made the whole thing up. Maybe this family wanted some clout, or I mean, suburban life is kind of boring. They wanted something exciting in their life. Some people have threesomes, other couples may invent ghost stories. So there. Anyways, moving on. The Mimoid Porch Pirate from Canada in 2023. So, these porch cameras, I really hate them. There's this whole inhuman web of interactions where people order everything from DoorDash, like their groceries and stuff. And it's supremely effective, yes, but in most cases it also violates and frays the links that link communities together. In my humble opinion, this advanced quote-unquote of like shipping technologies, online shopping, and like on-tap delivery services, and also these like annoying security porch cameras, it's a kind of contributing factor to societal downfall. Like, you have no face-to-face interactions, you don't thank anybody, and these people working minimum wage jobs, usually with lots of crises in their own, they're just going door to door, dropping people's fucking like fancy dresses, sundresses, vitamin supplements, groceries, and if you ever did that job, you're very brave, and the temptation to steal, or at least put your booger on the package or like spit on it, is always there. Anyways, another very creative person apparently succumbed to this temptation, because this smart individual who I commend, he's like a modern day Robin Hood, hid under this kind of traffic cone, that's this human sized traffic cone, and just whoop, 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 just walk up there, took the package and fucking left. What a hero! What a hero! Now, maybe this family who got the box with this porch and veranda, maybe they're like nice folks, but like for partaking in such an inhuman delivery system, you automatically and categorically turn evil, Like, if I met these people, I wouldn't obviously want anything bad to happen to them, but like, if you do this, and if a creative cone person comes and fucking steals your package, you got no right to complain. In fact, you got away with the lightest fate possible. Anyways, not to ramble too on, this guy is like a complete criminal cryptid entity. He's creative, he's something that has never been seen, he's a legend. He looks like one of these gonk droids from the Star Wars extended universe. Well, in the original, very, very first Star Wars movie, there's a robot like this called Gonk, and it's obviously like a very creative creature designed by George Lucas and his team. Just a guy with some legs, and they supposedly call this a charger droid. It's just like a generator that walks around powering shit. And this became such a legend that die-hard Star Wars fans like even joked about an entire religion again around this Gonk droid. And then he was in many computer games, and I think there are even Lego versions of the Gonk droid. Anyways, not to get too sidetracked, but this guy looks like a Gonk droid. Fuck you, Amazon. Fuck you, security cams. Fuck all the inhuman, dehumanizing, anti-face-to-face interactions. Fuck suburban life. Fuck being scared of everybody working for you. This guy is a hero of your time. Ding-in, ding-a-ding-a, ding-in, ding-in, ding-a, ding-in, ding-a, 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 boom. Okay. Crime is obviously like, it's one of those crimes that are illegal but not immoral, petty theft. And my verdict is, when there's a will, there's a way. If possible, if you don't want the cone hero to take your deliveries, maybe order online deliveries to your office, or maybe don't order them online at all. Go buy face to face. You will feel better, you will have human interactions. Maybe it will be less efficient, but you will have had a better day. I'll guarantee you that. Anyways, moving on, we have the quote-unquote Green Man, another Pennsylvanian story, but this is actually a more heartfelt and touching story. So he's this guy reported from Beaver County, Pennsylvania. Imagine you're going out for a night drive between the 1920s all the way up to the 1980s, walking around, and you see a dark, mysterious figure. Woo woo! Well, you come closer, boom, this is his face. What do you do? What do you do? Is he a ghost, a demon, a killer? But no, actually, he's like a pretty normal guy who just had an unfortunate accident in childhood. Pay respects, press F to pay respects now for Raymond Theodore Robinson. He basically growing up had an electrical accident, and there are like many stories written about this guy. He's a ghost, he's a boogeyman, he's a poor factory worker who fell into a vat of acid, he was hit by lightning. There are many legends about him, but he was actually one of the kindest human beings in the world, despite his horrible disfigurement. After this childhood incident, he basically lived making leather upholstery at home, and like in order not to scare people, he went out on these night walks. And it says there are many news stories about this. More than 20 years after his death, people are still talking about him in like local coffee shops, and at least 2 websites contain in-depth accounts of his deeds. Well, you can look further, but honors for Raymond Robinson from the town of Big Beaver. And basically there was even a plan to make a movie about his life, but apparently that didn't happen. And how did he get these scars, you might ask? Well, as a child, they reenacted this conversation. There was a bird's nest on an electrical pole, okay? And as a kid, these guys wanted to go up there. The young Robinson said, "Who will see how many birds are in that nest? Not me, for there are electrical wires up there, and the little fellow was nearly killed up there 6 months ago," one of his companions replied. Man, what bad writing. Do you think kids really talk this way? And the little fellow was nearly like, no fucking kid. Well, I will find out anyways, Robinson says. And he began climbing the electricity pole, I guess, I don't know. And then he was just shocked. In fact, I even found the newspaper clippings from that time, from 1990. Doctors marvel at this guy's survival. There are only holes left where his eyes were. One of his hands is gone and both arms are in bad shape, so his eyes melted. Horrible. The rest of his body has horrible burns. Anyways, this is just like a very private and really grievous injuries. But he talks readily and he's a like good-spirited guy. So there are no crimes here, but it's like a really nice, heartwarming, like chicken soup to the soul kind of story. No matter what happens, keep on chuggling. And this is what this guy did, Raymond Theodore Robinson. Yeah. And then we have the questionable and slightly racist urban legend of hypnotic gypsies, or gypsies taking people away to do stuff. These legends are very popular in Europe and surrounding areas. I have lived for a long time in Turkey, and since childhood we were kind of warned against, let's say, gypsies or Roman people as they are called these days. Don't go near them, they'll abduct you, they'll cut off your tongue, they'll break your legs and turn you into a beggar, they said. Of course, these kind of licentious legends are heaped onto any group living in the fringes of society, so there's not much to say about this criminal cryptid. Well, it's an urban legend that's kind of tainted with racism, as I just told, but there is something to be commended about the Romani people for being able to carry on an alternative way of living in the middle of contemporary urban societies. And there are, of course, many stupid urban legends about these things, and online and offline as well. I mean, from an early age, people kind of like published these so-called gypsy magic amulets, which apparently enabled them to do magic. And there are even like these YouTube videos of like an actual gypsy stealing a mobile or something. There are lots of gypsy magic books and gypsy magic spell books or witchcraft books. And it's also weird how gypsy women are kind of like portrayed as like, hot ladies that are kind of different, but, always ready to go. But yeah, there's like something very insidious about them. If a gypsy cursed me, how can I remove the curse on Quora? A gypsy woman in Rome cursed my son when he ignored her today. We gave her his teacup, and now he's having bad dreams. Can these curses do anything? I don't know. Like, all of these things are heaped onto these people. Certainly, as with any heterodox community living alongside another community, there will be some friction, of course. And yeah, like, if you are a naive Gen Z kid and you go to a gypsy encampment or like a gypsy neighborhood, some people will try to take advantage of you. But this is not to say that gypsies routinely abduct people and turn them into beggars. So yeah, no crimes as far as I'm concerned. It's just mystical prejudice and tribalism. Moving on, we got one of my favorite topics to rant about: the Halloween candy tamperer epidemic that took place in North America and surrounding quote-unquote developed countries from the 1970s onwards. This is being recorded on the 25th of October 2023, and Halloween is in a few days. So, get ready for another wave of phobias. Steering clear of dangerous candy. All these parents are worried about strangers putting shit in kids' candy. Some parents in the Upper Beaches area found a thumbtack inside a chocolate bar. Toronto. It really doesn't surprise me that most of these reports come from Canada too. Some people are also scared about candy being laced with marijuana. I don't know. Apparently somebody also found this nail in their candy too. Like, a kid took it to their parents and they were just so scared. A parent in Cantley Village near Sydney contacted investigators after his daughter reportedly found 2 pieces of wire inside caramel candy. Just bullshit. And there are loads and loads of reports like that. Sharp object. Every year, unfortunately, the police service does receive 1 or 2 reports similar to this. Fentanyl. So it's a problem when it's in your suburban kids' fucking candy, but it's not a problem when doctors are pushing these on unsuspecting communities. I mean, I hope this attitude gets like really rough justice really soon. What can I say? Razor blade found in Toronto girls candy. And then there are also these lots of contemporary signage and like decorations saying like, for eco-friendly Halloween, trick or treating while social distancing. No thanks, trick or treaters. Please don't knock on this door, as we don't wish to take part. Now, this could have several reasons, of course. Maybe they religiously don't want it, or they're scared of wire in their kids' fucking candy, or maybe they're just annoying and antisocial nevertheless. Despite all these shit claims, unfortunately, an expert reviewed all these cases, and according to Joel Best, such precautions are not necessary because, according to him, there's no evidence that this is happening, and yet we like the story. We like the idea that it's scary. So it's like a meta Halloween scary tale, Instead of, I don't know, ghosts and headless demons and stuff, you have anonymous people lacing your stupid kids' candy with fentanyl and wires and razors and stuff. And apparently another factor contributing to these reports is, well, the propensity of kids to seek attention, And what better way to seek attention than to pretend that somebody poisoned your candy? Claiming to have received a contaminated treat is a way of getting the concerned attention of adults who are going to treat you respectfully. They are going to treat you like a victim rather than a troublemaker. And I have some personal memories growing up, and yeah, this was exactly the attitude in my mind. Given mischief and fear are critical elements of Halloween, it makes sense that this is one of the pranks that kids pull onto their stupid, paranoid parents. I don't think there are any crimes here. I don't think anybody deranged enough to poison or like put razors in kids' candy are gonna have this kind of off-putting effect that kids will know how to avoid, and most of it is just kids trolling their parents. And also, I can't stress this enough, modern parents are so stupid, fearful, antisocial, and hysteric that it's just evil. Like, you know the phrase sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic? Well, on a similar rhyme, sufficiently advanced helicopter parenting is indistinguishable from evil. And when they grow up, your kids will hate you for it. I mean, of course, then again, I know people who have kids, and I know what an awful thing it is to raise a kid in this day and age. Monetarily and energetically, in this day and age, both parents have to work in order to stay alive, basically. And on top of that, add the burdens of taking care of a child, people's nerves get frayed. So if you look at it from that angle, I can understand. But still, I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but I've had the displeasure of knowing some really stupid friends of friends. Like, the kid's in a fucking kids park, and both parents are like running behind him or her, just in case the kid falls. But you have to let the kid fall a little so that he or she learns to be an individual. If you do this, you will choke, you will snuff humanity out of your child, and when that child reaches like his or her teens, they will hate you for it. Now, the most absurd example of this shit, I kid you not, like, this was a friend I kind of respect, so I can't talk as awfully about her. But anyway, so there was this like toys shop on the second or third story of an apartment building, and in order to advertise to passersby, they had like put a row of teddy bears on the window, okay? And my friend was aghast, and she was saying like, if kids see this later on, they might pretend to be the teddy bears and copy it and fall down the window. It's gonna be so, I'm gonna call, like, she literally like contemplated calling the police on this toy store. And it's just like psychotic, just fucking psychotic. I think there's like some hormonal overdrive in the brains of kids. You know what I mean? I mean, it's one thing to be worried about your children, but this is a whole psychopathology itself, and it's not getting better thanks to all these news and all this like stupid technologies that make it easier for people to spy on their kids. Like, let me just say, no parent with college education these days raises kids without a fucking camera attached to their household, in case they monitor, in case something bad happens. But it's just like a invasion of privacy and negation of agency. Anyways, I could go on talking for hours about this thing. Anyways, modern parents, you're kind of dumb. Then, in a similar vein, you have the cyber suicide challenge games that were kind of like another bugbear from the mid-2010s onwards. And I just love the responsible looking infographics media outlets made about this shit. Blue whale alert! Here are signs that your teen may be inclined towards the deadly game. Most psychologists say that a child tends to stay by himself, stops interacting with family, often talks about running away from home, or even death, changes eating or sleeping habits. Your kid immediately needs special attention. Do they fucking, I mean, look, of course mental health is a great problem in this day and age. I won't deny this. But like, if a kid just wants to be by themselves for a while, maybe, you're too overbearing. Did you think about that? Maybe it's not the blue whale or the Momo game or like some unknown cyber pathology, but it's fucking you who are like who need to give them a break. One thing that modern parents are like desperately doing wrong, and I'm not a parent, but still I will put my word in about this. They always try to like approach their children as some sort of like identifiable and actionable problem. So they try to talk to them, they try to be like fucking friends, or they try to put their fucking feet down. But sometimes you just, the best, like, as a kid, my memories of the best times growing up with my parents were those times when I was with them. We were like sharing the same space in the living room. Like, I was in one corner drawing, they were in another corner, like watching TV or like hanging out with their friends and stuff. And we just existed side by side. And once often, like, my mom maybe brought me sandwiches, but not even that. Like, I was maybe in my own room, but I could hear them from the other room. That's the best thing. Like, you need to be there with them, and you don't fucking need to do anything. Just hang out with them, and they will bask in the lightness of your presence. But if you like treat every strange act, like everything that doesn't conform to your stupid fucking sense of normalcy, as a problem, then you will drive your child into a spiral of oblivion. And then you might actually get to some like dark stuff. I don't know. Anyways, there are a lot of urban legends about this blue whale fucking game. Apparently in Russia these lists were circulating. Apparently Blue Whale was this game in which some unknown people, like, who mans these things, I have no idea, but some unknown people were forcing kids to one by one go through this list of like deranged actions. And the list is quite ridiculous. Carve F57 on your hand, send a photo. If you are ready to become a whale, carve yes. So cut yourself, listen to music that they send you, poke your hand with a needle, have a talk, secret fucking task, I don't know what this is. Wake up at 4:20 and go to the rails. 4:20 being a weed reference, so just to like make it extra scary. Now, of course, kids are impressionable, but if somebody really tricks them, it's probably not for suicide, but it's for like far more deranged purposes. I agree that social media is an unknown quantity, but these like, what to do? Ask them how they are feeling. Hey kid, how are you feeling these days? Hey buddy, hey fucking buddy, come on. Just give them some food and let them hang out. And it's just the basic stuff. Like, modern parents, they also have this like pathological relationship with food too. I mean, fuck that. I'm sorry, this is one of my most dirty-mouthed episodes, but it really like gets my ire up. Kids want to have junk food. They want to have McDonald's, they want to have KFC, pizza and shit. And like a bout of junk food every now and then isn't gonna hurt them. But modern parents, you gotta watch your eating habits. You're lactose intolerant, you're glucose intolerant, just get them some fucking like soul food. Hang out with your kids. Don't do nothing. It's gonna be okay. And this kind of also leaked into Turkey too. Many countries apparently had this blue whale fear. There was a research paper apparently chronicling the number of suicides from the so-called blue whale challenge. The deadly consequences. Oh God, they love a good scare, don't they? Because that's the only trick in their sleeve. The only trick up their sleeve. Fear. I mean, if this was a just world, Anyways, so apparently people committed suicide in Saudi Arabia, Serbia, Spain. The US was really impacted. India apparently, and Russia are outliers. And going back to this list, there was here references to VKontakte, which was the Russian equivalent of Facebook. So this was like a mid-2010s kind of thing. And in Turkey, this list also made the news and online urban legends. Apparently it was a list they found in the room of a girl who committed suicide. But once again, none of these stories were corroborated, And I mean, this might just as well be the kids trolling the online space than an actual thing. So in this list, establish a group, smoke in a bus stop. These are like the 1 year to-do list before death. Always hang around alone. Don't speak to unnecessary people. Esra, who apparently is a bitch. Now, everybody will call you the ghost. You will dress up as twins with Alena, who was apparently the besties with this girl. Now Alena is called Fire. And so after this, you will keep studying in spite of your mother, and you will win the same high school as Fire, who is your bestie Alena. So, this is passed off as a suicide list, but actually it's got some based commandments. Your mom doesn't want you to study. I don't know what the fuck is wrong with that mother. But yeah, I mean, kid wants to study and like hang out with her own friends, and we will fuck up everyone who makes us sad in this garbage heap of a world, it says. I don't know, some of these things are pretty dark. We will do a zero stare into water. I don't know what that means. Anyways, so this girl was like having a kind of like crush besties thing with this other girl, and like had some parents problems. It's kind of tough, but it's no big deal. And then you have this famous thing: if you get texted by someone with this profile picture, do not reply. And then more recently you had the Momo challenge, and this thing was actually a statue by a Japanese artist, and the media went crazy with this shit. And there are all these like, what do parents need to know about Momo? It's a sinister challenge that's been around for a time. It's recently resurfaced and has come to the attention of schools and children across the country. Blah blah blah. Lots of garbage text. In a modern people's understanding, the more formatted text you have about some shit, the more expertise you can claim to have. Once again, you cannot unsee these things about Momo without considering the effects of nearly 3 years of COVID lockdowns on children. Maybe if they're feeling bad or suicidal, maybe it's because, well, they did a number on daily life, did they not? So you gotta appreciate the greater context too. And everybody's going crazy. Momo, terrifying Momo challenge. Who is Momo? Oh my god, would you trust these women? Look at their fucking faces. Would you trust this guy? Would you trust like this expert? Warning! As if like a meteor alert or something. Momo challenge. Presidential alert. Get fucked. This guy is wearing this quasi-military or like jungle explorer shirt. Look at this fucking idiot. Just so that he looks like an expert about these things. This guy has no life. This guy is like barely has a life. This guy has no life. Challenge claims life, slits wrist. Oh my god. Top tips for parents: tell them it's not real. Be present. Yeah, good advice. Talk regularly with your child. Like, if a parent wasn't talking regularly to their children, and if somebody needs this as advice, why did you even have the kid? Blah blah blah, real or hoax, report and block, blah blah blah. I don't know, it's like the same story all over again. And of course, it emerged later on that this whole thing about the Momo challenge was also like a massive hoax, and it was just kind of exacerbated and exaggerated by these parents. Anyways, modern parents are so stupid, fearful, antisocial, and hysteric that it's evil. But I will be magnanimous, I will be charitable, I will consider both sides of the issue. So if you're a parent watching this, my respect goes out to you. You're doing something that's like extremely challenging in this day and age. So yeah, what can I say? Then moving on, we got the Ankara Syrian magic gang who were arrested in Turkey's capital city in the year 2021 during the height of COVID. And also this was also a height of refugee influx from Syria to Turkey and then on to Ankara. Well, basically, in the mid-2010s, the Turkish government, smartly following President Obama's advice, decided to join in the cheerful little cakewalk that was supposed to be the invasion of Syria. But it did not work out that way. Syria held out fair. It was a brutal brutal war. Millions of people were displaced, and of course they came to Turkey because they share the longest land border with Syria. So now there are lots of Syrian migrants in Turkey and in Ankara too. And apparently some of these Syrians were operating a magic gang, doing arcane voodoo shit, and they were busted by the police. And the sights that emerged from this thing, it's just a whole head trip, an aesthetic unto itself. I mean, if you pick up somebody from Tinder, or I don't know, maybe more high quality people go to Bumble or this other thing called Field these days. If you meet somebody from Field, Bumble, Tinder, or whatever, or Grindr, and you go home, to go, and their home is like this, you got a keeper. Oh boy! Just look at this whole place. It's like, I'm just gonna go back and zoom in. Oh god. I mean, just zoom in. This is like an aesthetic. Like, what are these? This is so counterintuitive and so grim. Because when educated people think about magic and rituals and shit, they think something more aesthetically pleasing. They think something more like vintage or something. They think about Roman statues or shit like Midsommar, which was this kind of ritual folk horror film, which coincidentally I kind of hate. But anyways, but nobody expects these like weird half-molten plastic dolls cobbled together, everywhere infested with wax and mold, like stains and dust and shit everywhere. Like, I don't know, is it just me who gets horny from things like this? Like, no, make no mistake, I wouldn't want my house to be like this, but hey, like, I mean, just gets my fluids gurgling is all I'll say about this. Like, I'd want to enter a room like this and like mess it up, like really mess it up, preferably with a partner as kinky as myself, like really do stuff to there and in there, and then like get out, check into a nice hotel, have a shower, and like, I don't know, watch TV together and have KFC. But anyways, this gang was like rolling, They were writing magical spells to hurt people or like help people get away from the country, help them break into Europe. Even an interesting detail was that they were using Barbie dolls and like straight off the shelf, like dime store toys as parts of their magic. And it's just this filthy aesthetic. And they were making, like, I kid you not, millions and millions with it. In fact, they were caught with hundreds of thousands in euros and dollars and in Turkish currency too. They were like raking it in, these people. And of course, you would be surprised, but this is actually an age-old practice, sometimes in this very same region in the world. So let me give you the lowdown. Throughout the ancient world, especially in the Near East, people have made and used magical papyri or magical lead tablets, and there they kind of had invocations to weird spirits, asking them to bind enemies' arms or grant them success. Or usually these spells are like anti-spells, so if you got something like, imagine there's like a house you really want to get. You don't pray to these spirits to give you the house, because these are dark spirits. You pray to them so that they kill the person currently inhabiting that house. So it's really grim. And they have all these like weird, like really simplistically made illustrations that, after the effects and patina of time, basically, they just look like really grim and dark. But like looking back at the cum house of these Syrian magicians, you could really see back in the day, these kind of had the same aesthetic, They were not something clean and sanitized, but they were actually something like really dark and grimy back in the day. These are figures made out from folded lead sheets, and this is like an actual voodoo doll that the magician stabbed to hurt somebody else. And a lot of people in this day and age believe in them. In fact, I can't guarantee that if someone pulled something like this off to me, I mean, I'd be scared at an instinctive level. So they probably did extortion too. They said like, oh, I wrote your name in the cum mask, and I came 5 times on it. I smeared dog shit over to it. So now give me 10,000 euros or you will never get to cross into Europe again. Something like this. Really dark. In fact, like in the present day Palestinian territories, in a place called Tel Sandahana, there was like a mother lode of these figures found. They were all made out crudely from lead, usually had sexual features. So I think this was something that's older than any civilization in the region, something as old as time. And who knows, like in desperate times, these traditions come back again. This was really actually touching. So they found this thing, like a wax couple wrapped together in a papyrus sheet, inscribed with an attraction spell. The couple was then wrapped inside an additional sheet of papyrus and placed in a clay pot. Then they put this in a cemetery. So also some good love magic too. And you know, if you find yourself in desperate straits in love or life or both, you know, like the mind just works this way. You just, if some magician comes along, you know, you want to believe in them. That's all I say. There's actually a great resource if you want to learn more about this thing. I kind of started with a joke, with this kind of cum filth fetish joke, but this is actually a like really fascinating area of study. So if you want to learn more about this thing, you could consult this book called Cursed Tablets and Binding Spells from the Ancient World by John Gauger. And it's full of translations and representations of such spells, and they're always fascinating. The art, if preserved, is really fantastic too. Like, imagine this drawing on a like 6-foot canvas. It would just make a fascinating work of art, don't you think? So there, go check it out, everybody. Or this thing, like this apparently was a spell. Like you look at it and you would feel it's probably the darkest hell demon. I don't know, like some donkey funk fetish shit, or I don't know. But apparently this spell was built so that some guy could win at a chariot race, basically. So they maybe asked the horse spirit for success, and they asked him to bind the other guy. So there, it's just weird like that, huh? Anyways, you can get this book on Amazon, or there are also ways of getting it illegally. Let me just say that much. Crimes involved here are extortion and blackmail. And God, if I was in that room, there would probably be some other, like, you know, too filthy to be legal crimes. Anyways, but in the truest sense, this is a return to tradition. You know, this is like some real life OG ancient Rome, ancient Greece, ancient Near East, Phoenician, you know, Baal worship, Warhammer 40k, return to tradition shit right here. Anyways, if you've been putting up with my shenanigans for this long, please comment, I want to be your filth doll, Kozeman daddy, so that we beat the algorithm and I get to see who has been watching so far. And we're not even halfway through. I got so much more to show you. And going on with the Turkish online jinn and entity miscellanea. Now, I'm sure many countries have this thing, and although I try to be as globally comprehensive as possible, I know the best about my own backyard, and being from Turkey, I just wanted to chronicle a few more urban legends that have been paraded online as actual photographs of jinns. By the way, jinns are a form of spiritual creature that basically make up one of the core tenets of Muslim belief. Basically, they're meant to be creatures created out of fire, and in the contemporary age, or should I say even in the contemporary day and age, many people still believe in them, not even as ghosts and like malign entities, but you know, if somebody has a rural background, they probably have an understanding of jinns of like actual, you know, entities that share the world with us. So in some ways that's kind of like problematic, because it leads to exploitation by basically people claiming to talk with jinns, as we just saw back there with the Syrian magicians and their stash of cash, you know. there's a sucker born every minute. But then again, there's something to be said about coexisting with such beliefs, and I think the whole belief in other people is very age old, and it goes as deep as time goes in this part of the world. And those complexities aside, this photo was like once making the rounds in the early 2000s. And basically they said actual photographs of jinns, look at their weird twisted bodies. But turns out it's actually a badly photoshopped version of a distorted version of a gathering of little people, like actual little people in Turkey. So there. Of course, in the early 2000s, not many people could tell photoshopping, so it kind of like got stuck and formed part of the collective psychiatric trauma of the country. In the contemporary day and age, there are many YouTube channels, TikTok channels, Instagram channels, lots of memes and stuff, and these all have like this kind of, yeah, we saw an actual jinn, actual video of jinn, and actual approved jinn footage, and like most of these like are even like self-consciously shit posting, so they know they're like paranormal comedy for like kids to watch and like scare and dare themselves. But in a lot of these questionable videos, there are a lot of weird entities. One of my favorites has to be this thing, who was claimed to be a Jewish jinn. And remember, in Quranic lore, jinn are like people, they have free will, so they can choose to be Muslims, Jews, Christians, or faithless. They can be good or bad, and that kind of sets them apart from demons in Christian, let's say, contemporary mythology. And so this is Mujit, the Jewish genie, who was summoned to an invitation in the Taurus mountain region. That's like the majestic chain of mountains in the country's southern region. And Paranormal Aziz, the guy who runs this channel, basically invites this jinn to accept Islam. But Mujit the jinn says, no, I already have a family and stuff, so thank you, but maybe later. So, you know, he's very civil. And of course, then there's this thing, which, I mean, I just have to show this as part of the video. Roll tape.
Peki, oğlum ben inandayım ya. Peki, otur gel. Gel hadi gel.
So, I think you just saw that. This was, okay, so a great deal of folklore of jinns is intertwined with the folklore of treasure hunters in rural Turkey. Now, you may not know, but Turkey has more Roman relics than Italy and more ancient Greek cities than Greece, and everywhere is full of ruins. So it's not surprising that there has been a flourishing and really twisted folklore of treasure hunters in this part of the world. In most parts, this is like weirdly merged with like belief in jinns, or even belief in like twisted science. Like, it was on the news actually a few years ago. I should have included this in this presentation, but well, I just remembered it now. But just, you have to go with it. Basically, there was a guy collecting money from rural people. His story was so fantastic. He basically said, I am in contact with jinns who can unlock and make visible this hoard of gold for us. But in order to get the treasure, the jinns told me to acquire this special chemical that's only manufactured in Germany. And then he collected like thousands of euros from these suckers and then just ran away to Germany, and then he was arrested, I think. I mean, it just shows the level of like muddled up worldview in most, not most maybe, but in some or like a considerable group of people's heads. For them, technology is indistinguishable from magic, jinns are indistinguishable from archaeology, and it's all just a weird mess. And the guy you just saw dancing was apparently looking for treasure in the wrong place, or maybe he didn't have the correct German oil to anoint the jinns or something. So he was claimed to be stricken by the jinns and gone insane as a result. But the craziest of all of these entities has to be this thing called He Who Is Not Human, reported from a certain Bünye village, in brackets because this place doesn't exist, as you are about to see, in Turkey. Basically, this video came up in which two people are walking. Well, you just have to watch it. Cue tape. 1, 2, 3, go.
Abi bu geliyor. Bilmiyorum abi, bakayım.
Gitme diyorum ya.
Gitmiyorum, tamam gitmiyorum.
Geri gel.
Selamünaleyküm.
Ali abi,
Ses versene. Abi bu normal insan değil.
Ha?
Bu insan değil. Bu insan değil. Bu insan değil. Geliyor. Ne yapıyor?
I mean, you just have to get all the nuances. They just first say this is not a normal person, and then he's like, hello there, and then he keeps coming, and then at the last there's this like weird gunshot, and this thing was doing the rounds, like this weird dark quasi-human entity approaches, and it really did the rounds on TikTok, and some people just like repeated it ad nauseam. It says the jinn in the Bünye village, or some took it to a more paranormal, like, so the rule of thumb in Turkey goes, if you're like some person in the back country, the heartland, you just believe in jinns basically. So you just say, jinns, you see. Now if you are college educated, you're actually, and many people would contest it, but if you have some sort of a college education, you're actually way dumber than the people who live in the rural heartland. You actually have a like terrible disconnect with life. Nobody who has received a college education in Turkey, or let us just say 90% of these people, really have like no understanding of life, and they're like cut off with their own stupid class distinctions and their goddamn cargo cult of European or American or Western appropriations. Anyways, but like these people still retweet or like re-TikTok this Bünye jinn footage, but to them it's not a jinn, it's negative entity who can assume a human form. And then of course some based Gen Z kids, they say, me after playing games in my room for 10 hours straight, and how I look to my family basically. So a common meme. Now this thing like really exploded in popularity, but it all actually goes back to this one channel called the HachoTube Paranormal channel, and my hats off to them. Like if you are coming from HachoTube, like my respect to you. So in this channel they just go around in this part of the Black Sea region in Turkey, and they just keep seeing jinns and stuff like that, and like they have these misadventures. Obviously it's all acted. Even the place, the Bünye village, doesn't exist, but it's like a kind of fake place name, and these guys are just having fun. This is the original video, and the comments are just hilarious. He says, thanks for being the first person to actually shoot at the jinns. This guy is more like life advice. Brother, you are panicking, you're shouting too much. Give up on this paranormal stuff. And this guy says, oh, he shot them with a prayer bullet. And then this weird girl came out, this e-girl character came out. I got just one question. Do these really happen? And then of course she got lots of likes. Anyways, the only crime, at least in this Bünye village paranormal encounter, might be the unlawful discharge of a firearm. And my verdict for this hilarious turn of event is obviously paranormal shitposting. Now, being Turkey, I am predisposed to know more about these weird Turkish encounters. But if you come from basically any part of the world, and I know I got lots of viewers from India, Indonesia, the Philippines, so on and so forth. If you got similar memes or shitposting stuff like this going on, please let me know. And also, special thanks to my good friend Hilmi Lord Grunwalder Ira for bringing these to my attention. Being a younger person, he was actually the person who said, sir, you gotta look at this, and like showed me these amazing videos. And he who is not human, as they say, bu insan değil, bu insan değil. They're like, oh bro, he's not human, and the guy goes And now let us move to another vertical video format, grainy video criminal cryptid entity, this time from India in the province of Jharkhand. Meet the Jharkhand roadside alien. It all started with this video posted in 2021. A guy says, "This video has become the talk of town. People are assuming it to be an alien, and it actually could be. Keenly observe," I love how these inflections of the English language as it is spoken in the Indian subcontinent, by the way. "Keenly observe the 13th second of the video, a red Lapros wing UFO flying with jangling sound. We don't understand what this means, but we will see. And then this kind of becomes a runaway hit. Somebody else comes in. "Brother, please tell me, is local people seen and listen to the sound of any unknown objects like UFO or not? Please feel free to tell. If you know something more, prayers." And he's very serious. "Yes, people in the video have heard the noise." Notice that I am making fun of these people, but being an objective and liberal person, I will never make fun of other people's accents because I speak with a very weird accent myself. Anyways, here, let's watch the video and judge it for yourself. The creature here looks very creepy, and I wonder if you'll be able to see what this guy means with the red Lapros wing UFO. Okay, cue video. 1, 2, 3, go!
हमें मत लेके जाबे अरे पागली चुड़ैल लेवल वे चल ना छोटे पे रिकॉर्ड कर नहीं रिकॉर्ड.
Now that was strange, isn't it? Obviously the red Lapros wing UFO was just like some lens reflection from another passing vehicle, and it's kind of like low down of these guys to like try to palm that off as a UFO. And nevertheless, the entity here looks really creepy. I thought my first assumption was maybe somebody with a disease or somebody again wearing a costume. I first thought maybe they actually made a weird alien costume and made a child wear it somehow. And then this, of course, really went viral in Indian news, online, offline, YouTube, and other platforms. They went really crazy about it, basically. Fact-checking, writing, viral video, watch. Video leaves netizens spooked. I mean, this Indian inflection on spoken English, certain terms like netizens, this is like 20 years old, but you know, from them you can tell who's doing the English speaking. I just love local cultural nuances on a previously international cultures just like this. Anyways, turns out after much scrutiny and I think a lot of behind the scenes pressuring, the guy admitted that it was just an old lady walking down the road without clothes. Actually, I had a 30-second clip, but this is all I showed. Unfortunately, the only crime here was maybe jaywalking, and the verdict was it was probably a poor woman, maybe with a mental disorder, a physical disorder, or maybe more. Moving on, another strange lady you should look out for, although a more legendary one, is the legend of Kuchisake Onna, the creepy lady from Japan, reported mostly from the 1970s onwards, but it's actually a kind of older story. It features this like very weird lonely woman, and you know, she comes up to you, creeps up to you and asks, "Am I beautiful?" And after this point you're confronted with a flow tree of several options, none of which are really great. So when she asks you, says, "Am I beautiful? Ara ara," you have either like, you could say, "Hubba hubba lady, yes, you're really hot." By the way, she's wearing this weird mask, okay? That's crucial. If you say yes, she takes off the mask and reveals a kind of slit mouth, a bit like the Joker, you know, a bit like, "You wanna know how I got these scars?" Anyways, if you say yes, then she shows you these scars, and then if you still say yes, you know, if you got that sort of a kink, she actually takes the scissors and cuts your mouth to look like hers. Now, that's the best option for you, you know. I mean, you're just gonna have to live with it. You're just gonna have to live around it, because if you had said, when she appeared with the mask, if you had said, no, you're not beautiful, you'd just be like, ah, you're dead with the scissors. And then after the mask, if you now said, oh, sorry, I didn't know your mouth was cut like that, I don't like cut hoes, basically, then she'd be so furious that she would actually cut you in half, your entire person, your very being. It's not very clear if this bisection is horizontal or vertical. If it's vertical, it's even more hardcore. But all goes to show that hell hath no fury like a woman spurned. But apparently there are other survival tactics. If you just say average, she's kind of like, oh, what do you say to me? And like kind of gets confused for a while, and then you could run away. Now to this all, Daddy Kozeman can suggest an alternative fourth strategy in which you just get on with her, you know, just don't answer, just, you know, grab her and look at her eyes seductively and start making out. I'm sure then, you know, she'll be overcome with ecstasy from my weird pent-up energy, drop the scissors, you know, and then the rest of the happenings of that night would not be fit to tell. But I think I'd take her to the filthy Syrian magic apartment. And anyways, that's just my joke. Sorry about that. You know, it's just a hot autumn season. I don't know what's gotten into me. But long story short, the legend of Kuchisake Onna has spawned many imitations. People do cosplays of her. They wear masks of her. She featured in mangas and maybe even animes. People do TikTok trends based on her. And there are lots of movies about her too. And I'm not sure if some of these movies are fit for everyone to watch. You know, I'm just saying, maybe they're just too scary or some shit. But anyways, that's the story of Kuchisake Onna. I don't think there are any crimes here until, if at all, she strikes you with the scissors, you know. And it's obviously based on an atavistic fear of strange women, you know, because people are scared of women that way, and it's just one of the dastardly evil hypocrisies inherent in all world societies. In fact, many countries and many places around the world have these myths and like quote-unquote criminal cryptids about these creepy women, you know, these strange women that appear and stalk you or like appear in a mirror or something. But there's just so many of these stories that I purposefully like did not include them all here. But moving on, continuing with the everlasting allure of crazy ladies, we got the Polish internet urban legend of the crazy dentist ex-girlfriend. This is just a representational picture, and this is what happens to this guy's mouth after she had her way with him. Basically, a dentist named Anna Makowiak. Once again, this is kind of sus, because although this sounds like a Polish name, it doesn't. Like, these are kind of the Polish names that an average American or a Brit would come up with. But I don't know, maybe they are commonplace names. Correct me if I'm wrong. But apparently there was this hot and slightly crazy Polish dentist, and she caught her boyfriend having an affair, and then, you know, she kind of like didn't let it show. And then when the boyfriend had to do some filings or some shit, she said, okay, honey, I do it for you. Then put him to sleep. And then when he woke up, his mouth was like one of those jawless fish that were the ancestors of later fish, you know. No teeth, just gums, just a round bloody hole full of aching craters where his teeth used to be. This was her way of taking revenge. Of course, this news kind of became viral around the world. Everybody reported it because it was just such a good story to pass up. And then, unfortunately, it was revealed to be a hoax. Further investigation by MSNBC.com, no, I don't want to open this, found that the story of vengeance was all a hoax and, you know, too good to be true. Apparently, there was no dentist named Anna Makowiak, and it was just like apparently a staffer in that reputable British institution, the Daily Mail, and a staff reporter called Simon Tomlinson just didn't know where the story came from and just went with it. I think he landed in some hot water later on, or maybe got a promotion. I don't know, cause like this is the way the media rolls. They only care about click counts these days. The only crime here is fake news, and the only verdict I can give is just careless reporting, doing an enzyme effect on a pre-existing urban legend. Anyways, going on, another urban legend of a strange person is the legend of Orang Minyak, the oily man reported from Singapore, Malaysia, and some surrounding regions from the 1950s onwards. Basically, this is a guy covered with oil. Jury's out on whether this is coconut oil or just petroleum jelly or maybe Vaseline. I don't know. But he's covered with oil. He enters houses, and apparently this oil is also like of a dark color. So he's like covered with like straight up petroleum itself, not even petroleum jelly. My man just took a swim in the oil ocean zone and landed in your bedroom. And he's just like a slippery customer. He's apparently covered with oil in order not to get caught. But the stories are kind of incongruent because we also don't know if you're covered with oil head to toe. It would also kind of be difficult for a person to maybe open doors or wrestle people to the ground, which he apparently later assaults and, well, does the R word with. And this story dates from like quite old newspaper phenomena, let me just say that much. Millions of people or thousands of people, they all came to see the oily man. And this talks more about the legend of the Orang Minyak. I love the side story too. Malaysia is melting pot of intrigue. It's just that phenomenon of former colonies taking the language of the colonizer state and turning it into a unique thing of their own. Another time, another planet. Everybody came to see the oily man, and there was even a movie made about him. Just, assaulting sleeping beauties. And this is the poster, I think. The Oily Man, this awesome film, the incredible story of Malaysia's most fantastic character. And I think this movie got a remade later on in the 1970s called The Oily Maniac. And now the Oily Man is no longer a svelte guy covered with black goo, but he's like a proper golem-like monster. So from news panic to movies to even more movies, it's just the evolution of an urban legend. And of course, it's really strange because fiction has a way of becoming real, And recently, I think this was in 2012, an Orang Minyak thief was actually reported, This guy, just not covered with oil but shirtless and got a black t-shirt wrapped around his head. Just look at him. What thoughts could be going through that weird, depraved, warped mind of his? Anyways, he just robbed the house after lady fell asleep with front door wide open, and he was just caught on camera, and this was just really, really scary. This too is the Orang Minyak, by the way, or the modern Orang Minyak. Just a common case of petty theft, but more creative because of the lore surrounding it. Also, recently in 2012, there was, I think, a village panic once again near a place in the district of Melaka. People reported this oily man again. There were multiple sightings, and one eyewitness saw it crawling up the stairs of the house, just like Spider-Man. So that's kind of an interesting pop culture reference. And they were really serious about it. We can laugh and joke about it, but this is serious. This shit's real, man. All the families here have young girls because, well, you know what the Orang Minyak gets around to doing. Anyways, the crimes, if at all real, are breaking and entering, assault, maybe rape, and my verdict on the Orang Minyak is local folktales being exacerbated by news and then turning real again in a bizarre, never-ending loop of legend, crime, and media furore. truly, this is one of the textbook cases of criminal cryptids. In a similar vein, we have the Catman, the Hombre Gato legend from Argentina in 1984 and beyond. This was a real man who kind of hissed, clawed, and attacked like a cat. He struck numerous times during 1984, basically mostly attacking young men. And there are many news clippings and dedicated websites and research pages about this phenomenon. I could only read a few, but I took pictures of these clippings for posterity and just to show what a nice researcher I am, basically. From what I've been able to learn through Google Translate, this was a notorious and mentally unstable individual, a masked man dressed in black, who kind of appeared in a neighborhood called the Bransenhauses neighborhood, which was like an upscale neighborhood at the time, meowing and scratching doors and windows. And then in early August, he made his first attack to a 23-year-old young man. It was a Tuesday night. I was coming back from my grandma's house, my abuelita's house. I wasn't very scared at that moment, but I quickened my pace when I saw a person coming behind me. Then I started running, and I looked, and he was running after me too. He must have shot 2 blocks when he caught up with me, and he ran over and grabbed me. I tried to get away, but I couldn't. There he told me a word I cannot repeat. So this is very dark and satanic. What did he tell? The world is gonna end in 1997 or something? Then he meowed loudly with a thick voice. He started hitting me, scratched my neck because he had grabbed my neck with both hands, and it seems like he had some quills. I think I put this through Google Translate, and it probably means that he had like sharp fingernails. He put the gloves on the palm side. I can know this because a police doctor told me that if I had hurt myself with real nails, the shape of the wound would be different. So apparently he had like gloves stuffed with quills or like cacti quills, I don't know. And then basically he fucked off, and this guy was terrified. A week later, another attack occurred. This time it was a 17-year-old man. This Catman is really going after young boys, it seems. But this 17-year-old was kind of tough. He could only scratch the man with his quills again. Then he struck again, hit him in the stomach. Once he was knocked down, he called him by his name, threatening to kill him. So this Catman was somebody who knew his victims. So very mysterious and very weird. Also very dark about that thing which I could not repeat. A very Lovecraftian turn to what would otherwise be a reasonably common account of a madman or like local eccentric. But you know, when he starts whispering unspeakable things to you, then you know things are really serious. At one point, somebody who people thought was the Catman was lynched, and then once again a 47-year-old karate instructor was also accused of being the Catman due to his physical resemblance and his martial arts skills. And this is our Catman. Obviously, on its own, this is like a weird enough tale on its own, but you have to look at the history of Argentine during these years. Basically, a few decades ago, the country was taken over by a really terrible dictatorship. They institute a like terror-like purge of all and any elements they disliked. This dictatorship actually went through several incarnations, so it replaced itself 3 times. It was a really bloody and lawless time. And to cap it all off, just a few years before the Catman attacks, this dictatorship had the smart idea of going to war with England over the Falklands Islands. And to this day, this is a very divisive issue for any Argentinian I've come across. Even like the most liberal, otherwise hang it loose, easygoing people I know have like very strong feelings about the Falklands War. But then again, if you ask the residents of these islands, they almost unequivocally support being British citizens, so it's a very divisive point even in the present day. The Falklands War took place in 1982, and in 1983 the dictatorship which we looked at before, the military junta, fell from power and a sort of quote-unquote new age of democracy dawned. But it must be interesting to consider that maybe happening in 1984, this Catman was somebody who was somehow scarred during these decades of dictatorship, during the awful bloody purges of left-wing people, or maybe somebody who had kind of been severely traumatized in the Falklands War. We will never know. It was a local maniac, perhaps caught in the spirit of the moment. And his crimes, of course, are assault, battery, and the whispering of forbidden words. Moving on to a lighter criminal cryptid is the Çorum graveyard wraith in the beautiful Anatolian city of Çorum. Some interesting news began to spread. Local cemetery guards were seeing this strange girl in midnight hanging around near some graves, and these are pictures of that very girl, a pretty normal girl. But in the eyes of the people who lived here, this was like a really creepy thing. Turkish people have this like very weird fear of cemeteries. They believe that ghosts and jinns still thrive there, and if you disturb them, bad things can happen to you. Ostensibly, this is a vestige of Islamic folk belief, but it's also no different from the tradition of necropolises, which lay alongside many Hellenistic cities. So this girl was hanging out there near this one grave, and then the local night watchman left her a note, because she was coming here every night, hanging around, saying, "Why are you coming here every night? Let us help you. Leave us a note. Signed, the graveyard watchman." So they left her a note and then some blank paper and a pen to write with. And this is just one of the nice, charming things about Turkish culture generally. It might be slightly oppressive, but it's also a kind of culture where people watch out for each other and also even for strangers in their community. You can't have one without the other. This incident somehow blew up over social media, and each night dozens, if not hundreds, of local boys began to visit the cemetery in order to catch a glimpse of the ghostly girl, to such a degree that the local police cordoned the area off. And in a funny twist of events, the local director of tourism said that these legends contribute to tourism greatly in their respective areas. Be what it may, this legend really contributed to the recognition of Çorum for national tourism. Using the legends that formed over social media, we will form our own legends and convey this to the Ministry of Tourism. So they were going to develop the Çorum graveyard girl into a tourist attraction. And I don't know what their game plan was. I mean, these guys who gather here, they're like so horny that they're willing to settle for a phantom girl. So they just, group about. And this reached even local and even national news. And there was the usual media furore over this thing. And then YouTube channels and TikTokers stepped in, and it was just a maelstrom of shit, really. Here it says, the ghost in Çorum. They could not solve the secret of the mystery girl in the cemetery. She came again last night, and click to find out more. Even these like local opera-esque personalities took it up. Eyewitnesses shed light on the mystery of the Çorum girl. But then again, kind of local authorities and police stepped in. They apprehended the girl, and turns out she was just depressed. She was taken to a local hospital for mental health care, and then after being questioned, she was released, and I think all was well. They may have returned her to her family. I mean, it just makes sense. This was probably a poor girl disturbed for whatever reason, and it was just social media's shitstorm over one edgy or disturbed teen. But it was just ridiculous how the local minister of tourism stepped in and tried to turn this personal tragedy into a local gain. And before you think this is a particularly Turkish vice, no, actually. There are numerous places in the United States and even England that invented ghost stories back in the 18th or 19th centuries, just kind of used these stories as part of a tourist attraction. The only difference is that the Turkish version of these things is more crude, graceless and artless, but it's good enough for the Orient, as the expression goes. Anyways, moving on. We then have this criminal cryptid, the El Sacamantecas legend, which was prevalent in Spain in the early 20th century. El Sacamantecas basically means bagman or sackman, and he was just like a creepy old man with a sack over his shoulders, a burlap sack, walking around and abducting children. In some cases, this legend was somehow turned into a werewolf story, so not only is he like a bag-carrying child abductor, but he's also part dog or part wolf, so a genuine criminal cryptid, probably maybe based on real-life crimes, taking on the aspects of a surreal personage. There are also some real genuine bona fide mass murderers associated with this legend, making it a truly criminal cryptid. One of these is this guy, Manuel Blanco Roma Santa. Long story short, he thought he was a werewolf and he somehow tried to extract fat from his victims to maybe make soap. By the way, this is the bust of Roma Santa in a psychiatric institute. A real piece of work, as they say. Then there is this guy, Garayo, who was a serial killer. I mean, he hired prostitutes, killed them, and tried to also extract their body fat or something. This is a long-running theme with these killers, by the way. They always extract something, from their victims. So I don't know what caused this grouping of gruesome crimes. Also, there was this incident called the Crime of Gador, in which this one guy shown here on the left, Francisco Leona, was apparently hired by some rich people to kill some kids so that the rich people could use their blood and fat as medicine against tuberculosis. I don't know, there are like some real deep and disturbing echoes between these tales and the current conspiracy theories about, Pizzagate and like government figures abducting and torturing kids to like suck their blood or use their blood or suck their life force. I don't know. Each of these figures have really long and well-researched YouTube videos associated with them, so I'm not gonna go too deep into their history. Go look them up. Manuel Blanco Roma Santa, Garayo, and the Crime of Gador. And the crimes here are really heinous, kidnapping, murder, you got everything in there. And the verdict is they are some of Europe's first serial killers turned into legend. One of the themes I really want you to notice with this podcast is how crimes turn into legend and legend turns back into crimes. It's almost like a yin-yang situation. On a lighter note, we have the bearded baby of Apocalypse. There are no true crimes here, but it's just like an interesting case of media turning basically a bullshit story into a case of national uproar. In 1987, the celebrated Tan newspaper, which was like a stupid tabloid, carried this article with the horrible, scary and nightmare-inducing image of this baby here. Remember, these were years in which people did not see as many images as they did now. Now everybody wakes up and they look at 100 pictures in Instagram before they wake up and go pee. But in those days, images were like really precious, and like a picture like this people remember for years to come. Let me just read. The rumor that has Turkey in uproar. At the Cerrahpaşa hospital, a bearded baby was born and began to speak immediately, saying that on the second day of the Bayram, that's Eid al-Adha for English speakers, the judgment day will come. So he speaks and he foretells apocalypse. Quickly, news spread from one end of the country to the other. Everybody started calling our newspaper offices. Since 3 days we have been receiving calls in shaky voices. They asked us, is this true? Is the judgment day really upon us? Show us the truth. And then some readers were saying, if there is such a thing, do not hide it. Publish a real photograph so everybody can prep for the apocalypse. And this was just something like horrible. It left a generation scarred for life. Just look at it. A bearded baby with glowing eyes, maybe even a mark on his forehead, like the mark of the Antichrist or the Dajjal, foretelling the apocalypse. But the day came 3 days before Bayram, and it says, oh, the world did not end. And A lot of people believed in this story, but it was just fake news, and everybody kind of chided this newspaper about going with this bullshit story. But guess who gets the final laugh? Because this newspaper sold thousands and thousands of copies, and in that day, that was like big money. Time and again, the story of the bearded baby comes back in the Turkish tabloid press. Until recently, there was a thriving tabloid press in Turkey, spearheaded by such noble journals such as Korku, which means horror. Every day this newspaper ran with like over-the-top headlines such as "Sex with aliens here" and "Aliens walk among us," with this amazing picture. Just look at this guy. I mean, they basically downloaded stuff from the early 2000s internet and like run with bullshit copy. The monster in Lake One, which is a lake monster, which we will discuss in maybe another dedicated episode. And then stuff like the man without a face and alchemy and shit like that. In the year 1997, so 10 years after the incident, they actually published a photograph of the bearded baby. And once more, the bearded baby was back. Now these people, of course, had Photoshop to go with it. So it was a kind of a rerun, a soft reboot kind of thing. Now, of course, strange monsters as portents of apocalypse. This is a tradition, in European history, in the history of the Near East. There have always been cases of monstrous birds announcing the apocalypse, and a case to the point is this thing called the Ravenna monster, which was born in the 1500s, and apparently it was a symbol of the judgment day that was to come. Back in the day, this weird fetus was interpreted as such. The horn indicates pride. It apparently had no arms but weird fleshy wings. The wings, mental frivolity and inconstancy. The lack of arms, a lack of good work. The raptor's foot, so one foot was like a predatory bird's foot apparently. The raptor's foot, a symbol of rapaciousness and usury and every sort of avarice. The eye on the knee, mental orientation solely towards earthly things. The double sex, oh yeah, this baby had like hermaphrodite genitals too. The double sex apparently was to these people a symbol of sodomy, I don't know why. And on account of these vices, Italy is shattered by the sufferings of war, which the King of France has not accomplished by his own power, but only as the scourge of God. So, nothing new under the sun there. Perhaps the Turkish bearded babies are a bit lighter in tone. Obviously, you do have lots of monstrous birds, and the photographs I'm showing you here are just the tame ones. Do not look up what Harlequin ichthyosis means, for example. It's easy to see something like this being interpreted as an omen of Judgment Day and a symbol for political and martial disaster that was to come. Clearly you could see the commonalities, some of these fetuses, the head doesn't close properly, so they're left with a glob of flesh on the forehead, and it's easy to see something like this being interpreted as a soft horn. It's just really awful. So there, if you're interested in artistic malformations of the human body, I have two recommendations to you, by the way. One of them is Special Cases by Rosamond Purcell, and another one, much rarer, Genetics and Malformations in Art by J. Kunze and I. Nippert. Both of these are amazing books. Anyways, everybody loves a good old doomsday portent, and if there's any crime, this bearded baby was just fake news. Moving on, now we got the signal hijacking criminal cryptids, starting with the very famous Max Headroom incident. This is so famous, I'm not even gonna show the video here. Basically, suddenly in Chicago in 1987, TV signals were scrambled and people saw this weird masked figure laughing with a distorted voice. What most enthusiasts of this sort of weirdness don't get to appreciate is that the broadcast also had a weird spanking session. So somebody dressed as a maid was spanking this guy, and it was just a kind of great and funny signal-related crime. But this is not the only one. In the United Kingdom, there was something called the Southern Television Channel, and in November 1977, the broadcast was interrupted with an audio signal, and a voice in a scary tone began to speak about the age of Aquarius, this is the voice of Vrillon, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the sky, and the rest you could just screen cap and read it for yourself. May you be blessed by the supreme love and truth of the cosmos. Then again in 1987, there was a signal intrusion in Florida. Basically, HBO's signal was blocked and somebody calling himself Captain Midnight just broadcast this image. Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight. $12 a month? No fucking way. Showtime movie channel, beware. So yeah, he was just like flexing his signal hijacking skills, this mad cable guy. In my book, this might be illegal, but certainly not immoral. This guy did a good deed. And this guy is still alive. You can actually find his website. He was lightly fined and he then carried on with his life. And he owns an electronics business, installing and selling satellite dishes. All around base guy. And if you're watching this, Captain Midnight, my hats off to you, good sir. Full respect and mad respect from my part of the world. To John R. McDougall, also known as Captain Midnight. This is his website. You know, if somebody still does websites in HTML, you know that they're a good person. And, you know, they're a creative, unique, independent thinking individual. All the more reason to respect this guy. Moving on, there was also a similar broadcast intrusion in Turkey's Ordu Ünye district. And the channel showing the national TV channel was hijacked, and for 12 hours they just broadcast non-stop lesbian porn. The news articles chronicling these events unfortunately don't have any pictures or video, but the language is just quite funny to consider. An attack of lesbian intensive porn broadcasts greeted everybody turning on their TV to watch TRT1 in Turkey's Ordu province. So there. And it could not be stopped. That's all we know about this tale. I wish I was there to watch it, and whoever did this was not caught, and a folk hero right there. And then apparently in the early 2000s there were also friendly neighborhood pirate broadcasts who kind of broadcast Hollywood movies to a local neighborhood. And like you could just turn on the TV and watch Shrek in 2004, for example. What a good deed. And there are lots of forum posts about these things, saying like, I'm living in this and this neighborhood of Istanbul's Bağcılar district in the national TV frequency. Now I can watch Shrek. So is it that easy? I'm just curious. And then there was this urban legend saying like, this is not a pirate broadcast, but it's the signals leaking over from a VCD or DVD player. And this theory gains widespread acceptance to such a degree that, oh, I'm just worried. Basically, he hints that he's watching porn movies on his VCD player and he's worried about the signal leaking out. But if you know anything about electronics in general, you know this can't happen. You know, a DVD player, a VCD player is a closed system. There's no way of it leaking into the neighborhood. And obviously somebody was broadcasting Shrek, some good, unknown, nameless hero. Anyways, if there's any crime, this must be a minor misdemeanor. In my book, it's no crime at all, but it's like the mark of a hero. My verdict is, whenever there's a system, someone will turn in to hack it. Alright, now we reached the final criminal cryptid of our very long-running show. It's been over 2 hours and I have been speaking my head off. Thank you for staying with me all the way. And here we are with one of the most bizarre and grisly criminal cases of any recent decade. The mysterious and kind of dark fate of Brian Douglas Wells. Basically, this guy was strapped with an actual neck-mounted bomb device. Something like something straight out of the Saw movies. And he also had this weird handmade shotgun with which he kind of tried to rob a bank. And it was just bizarre. This is a very long and very complicated story. There are multiple people involved, some double crossing each other, somebody like tried to hire this guy to do a crime, and then in order to ensure he did the crime right, they mounted this thing on his neck. So it's like really dark and sordid. And if you just look elsewhere on YouTube, there are many very detailed reviews of this thing. I'm just listing this in the Criminal Cryptids extravaganza because A, it's just a very bizarre case, and you know, I'm trying to tread lightly with gory and bizarre cases, you know. And second of all, well, one of my online friends, a viewer of this channel, was an expert witness on this bizarre dark case. Here I am thankful to Ellie Brooks for basically relaying the following information to me. In a string of messages we exchanged like 6 months ago or something, after the first Criminal Cryptids video, she said she remembers this extremely well because she was there. They actually walked past the building that had the pizza shop involved in the case, so it was a pizza shop and not a bank. So I have one brother and he's 12 years younger. We were in Erie where this thing went down basically, and they could actually see this event happening as their mom stopped at a McDonald's, and just nearby this thing was happening. So they did not know what was going on, so they were cracking jokes. They saw this guy with the giant metal collar kneeling in front of the police car, and they were like, hey, keep your kings at home and stuff. Apparently they narrowly missed the explosion, and in an even weirder tangent, one of Ellie's friends took care of this guy's cat basically. So like 6 degrees of separation, huh? Just really bizarre. And once again, it's like really dark and grim that this thing is taking place in Pennsylvania again. What do they put in the water down there? I don't know, but you can read more in detail about this case elsewhere. It's very complicated, but in a way, I'm just happy to know people who've been there. It kind of shows the growing power of this channel, and I am once more thankful to you all, especially to Ellie Brooks, who acted as the expert witness on this case. For the crime assessment, what can I say? Yes, whoever was behind this did all the crimes, and there are conflicting narratives, like don't even go there. The verdict is that this was one of the most complicated and bizarre crimes in the history of the FBI. So there, everybody, like a dark case, which I am lucky enough to know people who have kind of been there, and at least they know the cat, so that's something. In conclusion, if you watched this far, please comment, I am now a crime master, Kozeman Daddy. Repeat, I am a crime master, Kozeman Daddy. So I know you watched all 2 hours of this weird series, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you understood that in between the lines of all these weird and creepy and sometimes grotesque and dark events, I've kind of been trying to like slip in a message of my own thoughts about our modern world and how basically things are going down in our age. In conclusion, we can say that every person is a different entity, and in our current day and age, everybody is kind of the same, you know, so it's really dark in that way. And criminals in turn become some of the scariest entities that somebody could hope to encounter in suburban life, especially in the United States. I mean, in the past you had heroes and gods and monsters, but now we have criminals. We fear them and we secretly envy them. And in our mystery-starred world, extreme crime becomes the legend, you know, so it's a new and underappreciated form of myth formation. This is not to glorify crime in any way or form. In fact, right at the time of recording, which is, well, late at night in the 26th of October 2023, I just learned of the really sad and scary and kind of wearisome main shootings in the United States. I'm not gonna talk too much about it, but basically a wild gunman terrorized a part of the the state of Maine, and over 20 people died, 60 people wounded. The criminal was basically a gun instructor, and at the time of recording he's still at large, so my condolences to everybody living in Maine and in the United States. I know I had at least one viewer from Maine, so like, hang on there, brother. There's also another thing to notice about these formation of criminal cryptids. Remember way back in this episode I was really hard on modern parents and their stupid helicopter parenting lifestyle, because it's a really sickening thing that I have been noticing in my own lifetime. Basically, you have things like urban and suburban alienation, everybody living atomized lives in suburban houses, families breaking apart. You have media hype and systematized government forms selling you and waving fear in front of your face for practically all day, all the time. It's an assault from which few people can escape. If you watch the news, you get scared because the media is run as a for-profit arrangement, and I'm not an 100% full-on communist, but I do believe that news need to be state regulated, or at least they need to be on a not-for-profit basis. If it's on a profit basis, it turns into a slope of fear and crass and hollow commercials. And you have everywhere in the world, not just in the United States, everywhere in the world, this media hype is fanning the flames of fear, making people afraid of each other, tearing communities apart, tearing countries and groups of people apart. It's just shameful. There are, of course, legitimate fears for family and well-being, but come to think of it, even in the United States, and it's a sad point that I am recording and broadcasting this in the day of a mass shooting, but even in the United States, you're less likely to die from a mass shooting than from a traffic accident or a lightning strike even. This does not negate the seriousness of the situation, but it just shows that, you don't need to be afraid all the time. And there's also a disgusting way in which fear of others or disgust or a dislike of other people, other places is touted as a class marker. And you see these especially in the choice of supermarkets people go to. Don't go to Walmart, that's where the creepy people are. Go to Target. Don't go to Target, we earn enough now, let's go to Whole Foods and buy some shit. But the food from Walmart is just as nutritious if you know how to cook it. And this in turn all comes together into a rancid and disgusting and deplorable fear of others, which kind of metastasizes into a fear of humanity in middle classes and above in the civilized world. And let me tell you, one of the big challenges in the upcoming, let's say, 5 decades, the world is already kind of unraveling at the edges, unless you're a terrible optimist, you must have noticed this. And one of the big challenges you are gonna face, if you have been lucky throughout the past, is going to be learning to live and respect and not to step on the toes of everyone who the media and basically vanity has taught you to fear and ridicule and dislike. That's going to be a big challenge, and it may make the difference between you dying peacefully in a bed and you dying sheltering from a group of people running towards you at high speed. Let me just tell you that. And in that space of horror, fear and alienation live these criminal cryptids. That was it. Another side note I have in all of these shows is that cryptozoology is a real form of science, but it's a humanities science. It's not a biological or real life science, but it must be studied academically as a folklore of modern societies. And I don't know, if I had my way, I would do a lot of things, but if I had my way about this thing, I would set cryptozoology as a kind of area of study in a dedicated university, a dedicated college. Instead of weird Turkish YouTubers, there would be many people collaborating and collecting these stories, synthesizing them and noticing common patterns throughout them. It's just something that needs to be studied instead of Deleuze and Guattari and postmodernism all the time. Anyways, do you know criminal cryptids not mentioned here? I don't plan on doing a third episode, but maybe, if enough criminal cryptids accumulate, I might go for another extra episode, because these things are fun to research and fun to record. Once again, comment and let us know, and also subscribe to this channel. Check out my Patreon, check out my Buy Me a Coffee, check the merch store for a Criminal Cryptids t-shirt. Also, check my Patreon for a downloadable version of this talk. And kind of spread the goodness of this channel. Share it with your friends, show it to your friends. If you're on Discord, share it with your group members, mention it on Reddit so that we get more subscribers here. And also, please consider supporting Prometheum, one of the members of the CM Kozeman Extended Cinematic Universe, on Buy Me a Coffee and on Instagram. Everybody appreciates your contributions. If you're subscribing to me, also consider subscribing to my friends who make this possible. Anyways, that was it, everyone. Thank you for staying with me all the way. Enjoy life and have a nice day. Goodbye. Yes, yes, yes. In each way and in each day, the Kozemanite horde is growing in number. Just look at all these names parading off into infinity. We have got them all. The strangest creatures and the most generous supporters from the depths of Asia, the antipodes, the west, east, north, south, and a few other directions that your civilization does not even have the concepts of. Yes, they're all here with me, part of the Kozemanite horde. And you might be asking yourself, how do I join this horde of special supporters? Well, it's very easy, my friend. There are but a few ways. You could go to patreon.com, or if you want to imbibe your master with some drinks, you could go to buymeacoffee.com, or you could check out the merch store and get all sorts of weird and fantastic gifts, including an up-and-coming Criminal Cryptid special t-shirt. Thank you all for being part of this endless horde, everybody. This channel lives and grows thanks to your support, and one day, together, we will take over the world.